I'm Eric from Longbox Review.
I'm Peter from the Daily Rios, and this is episode number 29 of Eric and Peter's Legion Project Podcast. And welcome to the show. This is Peter.
And this is Eric.
And this is the Legion Project Podcast, taking a look at Volume 3. Yes, Volume 3 of the Legion of Superheroes from the 80s, the Baxter Run, specifically issue number 29. Eric.
Peter.
How's your summer going? How's your summer starting?
Not too bad, actually, despite some personal issues going on in my life, but I'm not going to talk about that here.
Yeah, we did that off mic, right? Two old men complaining about.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's good. It's good. The wife and I are actually in the summer months. Our granddaughters who live with us, they go stay at their other home for June and August, and so we get those months just the two of us. So that just started, and now we just get to hang out.
Nice. Get a lot of comic reading done. Yes, maybe.
See, that's the thing. No, I wish. No. We, like I said, there's some stuff that happened recently in our family, and we've basically just been vegging and watching a lot of television just to kind of get ourselves through it. So
good.
Yeah.
A little self-healing. That's always good.
Yeah. How about you? How's your summer going? You're out of school now, right?
Out of school, I know. Out of school and just looking around going, what happened to theater and where's my life going? And
oh no.
Staring at the well, and then the well looks back, and whatever that saying is. No, it's okay. What am I going to do? It's like a repeat of last summer, more or less. Nothing to do, which is fine. Just waiting till the next semester begins. Trying to finish projects, trying to finish podcasting projects and comic book projects, and catching up on TV, and that's really it. Just trying to entertain myself for a little bit.
Comfort ourselves. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, those people who are just like, yay, we're back, and just right back to it. My God, like, okay, I need a wind down period, I think, or something.
Yeah. Ease into it. Yeah. It's very bizarre, the situation that we're in right now. And you have to think, years down the road, if someone discovers this podcast, years after this airs, and they hear us talking about this stuff, they're like, what are they talking about?
What happened in 2021? Yeah. When we send this out into space, people on Mars and all that are like, what are they talking about? I hear it, but it's good. I always say podcasting they're like little mini time capsules. I went back and was listening to older podcasts from some other shows, and very interesting to hear them talking about, oh, hey, the new Green Lantern movie came out. What are your thoughts? It's like, whoa. Yeah. Little blasts from the past, or just some strange things. So, but that's what I like that. I like that about podcasting. I like that about gives a little bit of a mark to it, a time to it, and like summer is always. I always think of summer as kind of like a fun time for comics. I don't know about you, but like something usually big always happens in the summer with comics. Last summer we didn't have anything because everything was shut down, and I don't know, kind of getting excited about new comics these days too. So we'll see.
Well, hopefully we can get excited about, maybe the return of a certain Legion of Superheroes comic.
I mean, I think Bendis killed it again.
Oh.
I don't know. I haven't even read those issues, but something, clearly it didn't grab a hold. I don't even think you could say future state was the cause of it or anything. You know
No,
what I
no,
mean?
no.
Like
Yeah.
it just wasn't of all his titles, and there were other titles that he did too that weren't really grabbing people the way maybe DC wanted, and unfortunately, the Legion concept got so it just became so different that who's gonna pick up that ball? Who's going to pick up that ball and do what you've read the issues, so you have a better understanding of like the concept and the characters. I just look at the page and go, who is going to do that Legion?
Yeah.
Who is going to draw that Legion? And DC is probably like, ugh, not again. We got to go on to like Legion, point 6.0 or whatever they're up to by now. So
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine we're going to just get a return to what we are talking about, that version of the Legion at some
mm,
point, just because they do that all the time. They'll experiment, they'll try new things, new visions, but then it doesn't connect or whatever, and they just revert to norm, unfortunately. I
yeah.
mean, I obviously we love this version of the Legion because here we are, but you got to do some things differently on occasion, at least.
Did you order there was wasn't it in the recent previews or the last month, they're re-soliciting the treasury of
Oh,
Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl's wedding, and it's a
yeah, no,
hardcover, I think.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I almost did, but I already have those. I have all the issues they have in that collection and already, and so I didn't want to get it again.
Yeah, I ordered
Even
it.
though it would be nice to have that in the tabloid edition.
hmm Yeah, I was like, sure, I'll get it. I don't have it. I'll get it. I'll look at it and see what it's like. So, because when we read it, or not, when I was doing the whole time trapper thing for one of our earlier, I guess for Legionnaires 3 or whatever it was, um, I was like, oh, I really would want this issue. This is that's pretty awesome. The story was cool. The artwork was great. It was a little wacky here and there, but it was like, okay, I kind of want that. So when they offered it, it was like, yep, I'm going to buy it.
Mm.
$40 or whatever, discounted at DCBS. So, woohoo.
Well,
Uh,
you have to show it to me, so or post some pictures of it online so
cool.
people can see it.
Yeah. They did what was it? New Fun Comics #1, the very first DC comic way back. They did a hardcover of. I have that somewhere. It's
Oh,
somewhere.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that being solicited, but
hmm
I've never seen it. So
Yeah. It's probably in one of my tubs, because it's oversized. So,
mm.
trying to keep it safe. So, that's what I do. I just put it away and never look at it. All right. That's enough preamble. Let's dig into Legion of Superheroes #29 from late September of 1986. Hit us with the synopsis, the credits, and then we will begin.
All righty. So issue number 29, No Star Shall Shine. Let's say that 5 times fast. This is by Paul Levitz, Greg LaRocque, and Mike DiCarlo, with Arn Starr doing some inking assists again. I'm wondering what the heck's going on here. John Costanza doing the letters, Carl Gafford colors, Karen Berger editor, with a cover by Steve Lytle, and I've already forgotten the colorist name. Such professionalism here. All right. Anyway, so this issue is about actually, this is the synopsis for this issue from way back when. The new Starfinger is back, and he's not shy about letting the universe or the Legion know it. And so on the prison planet Labyrinth, Mon-El and Shadowlass inspect the body of Lars Hanscom, the former Starfinger, whose face was branded with a star shape. Elsewhere, we see the new Starfinger murder Hanscom's assassin, telling his help that no one is, quote, in a position to argue with me. At Legion HQ, Element Lad sees off Tellus, Wildfire, White Witch, and Quislet as they leave to visit Tellus's homeworld, because according to Tellus, the disappearance of so many science police officers should lead back to Hycraeus, to my people's disgrace. Polar Boy and Magnetic Kid struggle a bit in subduing some protection racket goons on Mars, but then Sun Boy, Lightning Lass, and Phantom Girl arrive to help. The resort owner then laments, "How will you protect me against Starfinger?" Element Lad receives a request to have some Legionnaires accompany Ambassador Relnick to Dominion space in order to renegotiate the peace treaty, and then expresses to Dream Girl his concern that the team is getting shorthanded, to which she responds with an interesting proposition. Back on Mars, the Olympia Towers resort is attacked by an energy beam from an orbiting satellite, which Phantom Girl easily destroys. On the ground, Magnetic Kid keeps the structure from falling on everyone, while the remaining Legionnaires evacuate the guests. En route to Hycraeus, Tellus provides a much-needed overview of his planet and its connection to the and its connection to the Jill Dishpan. Incensed that the Legion has interfered on Mars, Starfinger orders them destroyed. A small cruiser first attacks the assembled Legionnaires, and then, when the ship has been disabled, several Brillians continue the assault. Magnetic Kid proves himself in combat against his compatriots. Irked at the additional failure, Starfinger kills his assistant, vowing to not tolerate the Legion any longer.
That was lengthy.
It was for an issue that really has not a lot going on in it.
Oh,
plot-wise.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised. I was sitting here. I was like, "Wow, he's still going."
I know. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it's
Anthony Tollin. That's the color artist of the cover. I had it in.
Right.
I had it somewhere else in my notes. So there you go.
Yeah.
This issue, Peter.
Go into it. Do it.
I'm sorry. I was just going to launch into my initial thoughts. This new Starfinger is horrible.
Oh,
horrible villain. What a dumb. I don't know how much detail I want to get into right now. The guy has this organization, right? He's in charge, and he kills the help. What kind of motivation is that? What kind of a leader, criminal business, or otherwise, is that? Come on.
It's like Darkseid.
Randomly right.
Killing his people.
That's right. Oh, geez.
Did you like his design?
Oh yeah. I was going to talk about that. I actually do like the design.
It's weird though, isn't it?
It's a little weird. It's like oh God, what's that Spider-Man villain?
Mysterio.
He's got that globe on top of his head. He's got that poncho, but
that flares out, right? It flares out.
Yeah.
Not quite into a star, but sort of into a star. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very interesting design, that's for sure.
Yeah, a new Starfinger. We've been talking about Levitz taking villains and essentially clearing them out of the rogues gallery, right? Validus is gone. Infinite Man gone. Was there anybody else that he took off? I'm trying to think of. I think there might be somebody else that I'm not thinking of. But in this case, restarting a Starfinger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crime oriented. Someone in one of the letter columns referred to him like a kingpin. I was gonna say, other than just seeing his temperament with his lackeys and his reach, there is he has a certain amount of reach, at least with that scene in Mars. Mm-hmm. We don't ultimately know what's going to happen with this, and Levitz is like, yeah, that's and we're not going to probably for a number of issues. I just kind of want to set him up, but I got other plans, and then we have to deal with other plans, and then we'll probably come back to this later. Which is like, okay, interesting way to write this issue, sort of like last issue, building one issue, some connection, not a lot. Mm-hmm. But it's really building towards something else, So.
Well, and speaking of that, it seems like that was really the point of this was to make that connection, that build up to what we're going to get to in just a few issues, I think, mm-hmm. and build an adventure story around it. And I'm being facetious a little bit, but it's just I really didn't like this this whole thing,
Hmm.
um, except for a few little bits in it. Yeah,
Hmm.
we'll talk about those. But this overall plot of the new Starfinger was just like, what was he thinking? What was Levitt's thinking in terms of this characterization and this encounter that he has with the lead? He's just so over the top in his dialogue and his actions. It's just like, what the heck is this? And
Yeah.
it's not. I don't take this character as menacing. He's just maniacal.
Hmm.
And maybe that's enough. I don't know. I'd be very curious um, to get the opinions of our listeners about
Oh,
this
that's
particular
interesting.
character.
Do you think maybe Levitz did it because we've been dealing with very high level Legion of supervillains, the Fatal Five, Infinite Man? Uh, we've sort of been dealing with villains that are out to kill, destroy. You know, it's always got to be um, the Legion. This one, but and yet this villain is kind of like in the background, annoying more than anything, probably.
That's a
Uh,
good word for him.
yeah. Uh, is trying doesn't want to burn down the world because then he can't control it, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
So is this a do you know of any other villain, Legion villain that's like this? Probably, I would think in the Bronze Age, right? Maybe.
Well, there's an immediate comparison to someone that we've read about just several issues ago, and that's Leland McCauley.
Oh yeah, 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 you're
It's a
right.
very similar vibe to me, only with the exception of Macaulay's final appearance. I forget which issue that was that we talked about him, where he just kind of goes, he just laughs off the whole thing, his encounter with the Legion, because he's rich and crazy, and because he's rich, he can get away with it.
Hmm.
And I think that's the last time we saw him. But he's very much in that same vein, the way you described Starfinger here. You know, he's a businessman working in the background. He's got his machinations. He's trying to get more money and more power, and but he's, you know, he doesn't kill off all the help while he's throwing his tantrums.
Hmm. And Starfinger feels, I think something that it sort of just hit me now is that he doesn't necessarily yet. Yeah, he's got floating satellites and things like that, but he doesn't feel very 30th century to me. Like he feels like
Mm-mm.
he could exist in the Justice League
Oh
world,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know. And we've seen that multiple times. Like heck, the Booster Gold issues we were reading when it had the 1000 and the director or master or whatever the heck that character's name was, it's sort of the same thing.
Hmm.
You know, what's so 30th century about Starfinger other than his name?
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah.
So we'll have to look at that. Yeah. Yeah, first initial thoughts, same way. The Starfinger plot became very secondary, way low down. And upon rereading, the other stuff suddenly got, I was making a little bit more connections with future stories or just some larger ideas. Not a lot this time. Usually we walk away, I think, with some real big ideas about things. I'm not sure that's going to be the case this episode.
Hmm.
Um, Outside of there's a lot of there's a lot of story beats going on to get us to another issue.
Yeah.
You know, and we haven't the Universo project basically, which is coming quickly. Um, So unlike even say last issue, which also was a one-off issue in many ways, there was a lot to talk about Starboy and discovering the character and the culture and Atmos and this one, uh, kind of like a reverse. Instead of a new hero, we got a new villain,
Hmm.
but just not
Good
enough
point.
yet. You know, not enough yet to really latch on to the
Yeah,
villain.
it just it wasn't as cohesive as the previous issues plot and characters. But you know, you know, you bring up a good point. You know, maybe because it's Starboy and we have that history with him, and we found that history of or his history so interesting and entertaining and yet here's this new character based on an old character that really wasn't that great of a character to begin with. And so yeah, maybe I'm coming at it a little unfairly, but it's hard to get past the faults of this issue. But
Yeah.
like you said, there's a lot of character things going on, a lot of connections,
Yeah.
continuations of things, and there is one particular scene that I'm going to talk at length about because I just thought it was really cool the way that
Cool.
LaRoque um, uh, portrayed it.
Great. Yeah, not my favorite issue. Not a terrible issue, just not my favorite. I think
Mm-hmm.
I personally remember a couple other issues that I felt were just not up to snuff. This one is like, okay, I see what you're doing, but maybe you didn't stick the landing a little bit. And that's okay. I'll let you go. I don't know where these issues. I understand that we're in this sort of one-off issue world right now. So
Mm-hmm.
okay, fine. Some of them aren't going to be the best. Um, let's talk about covers. So we have Legion of Superheroes 29, and then we have Tales, the final Tales issue,
The
354.
action-packed final issue, it says.
Yeah. With a cover by Ron Friends. Is there a color artist?
I couldn't find one.
No. So Ron Friends. So closing out a series that has been going on since Superboy, right? So this is the final issue of a series that began in 1949 as Superboy, 9 years before the introduction of the Legion. And then it changed its title to Superboy starring the Legion of Superheroes with issue 197 in 1973. But that was just on the cover. So you have some people who, if a title on the cover doesn't match the indicia, then it's not,
Right.
And then it became Superboy and the Legion, not just starring, but and the Legion in issue 222 in 1976. It finally changed in the indicia with Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes 231 in 1977. So it was still Superboy in the copyright by then. And then becomes Legion of Superheroes with issue 259 in 1979. And finally Tales of the Legion in issue 314 in 1984. So that's a heck of a legacy from 1949 to 1984 with so many title changes. And I don't know about you, but so I have all the tales. No, not all the tales. I have all the tales that aren't reprints. I have all the Legion of Superheroes, but the Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, I go back to issue 200, I think.
Me too.
And it's sort of, I have some missing issues, a bunch of missing issues. And I don't remember if I've gone back before that, but I feel like Superboy and the Legion from 200 on, that's like obtainable. Like I can get those issues,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so we're saying goodbye. We're not going to be able to do any more cover comparisons after this.
Yeah. And wow, what a way to end that legacy with such a crappy issue. I mean, no, just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Any thoughts on the covers? Any of the two covers?
Oh well, obviously the winner here is our Legion 29 issue with by Steve Lytle. While it's got this great image of Starfinger reaching through this star shape, from basically the middle of the cover, with all the Legionnaires' faces in the background. So despite those faces, I mean that's a really cool design. You're introducing this new character, the smoldering fury of the all new Starfinger. It says, it gives you, if you're going into the comic shop or you see this on the spinner rack in the 7-Eleven or whatever, and I guess it wouldn't be there, would it? Because this is direct market. Right. Comic shop anyway. This holds a lot of promise. It's like, oh, exciting new character. What's going on? Great colors here. With the reds and yellows, the Kirby crackle. I just really dig this image. And then you look at the poor action-packed final issue of the Tales of the Legion, and it's just a generic fight scene depicting from a scene in the issue. I even tried to. It's like, okay, wait. We got these rays blasting some buildings in the background. That is there a star shape in there in some way? I'm trying to give it some, a little bit of importance to it, but no, there's nothing else there.
I almost wonder if okay, so it's Ron Frenz. That's a total strange artist for the Legion. For DC even, I think,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's what I thought too.
Yeah. Ron Frenz is I believe Ron Frenz is my Spider-Man artist. Like when I started
Mm.
reading Amazing Spider-Man, he was on the book. So I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure. I almost wonder, didn't we have a Kevin Nolan cover, and
Hmm.
we had a few other ones that were kind of like, oh, that's interesting. So did they just acquire these covers ahead of time and they just start going through the list? Oh, let's get this one. And then at some point they realize, oh, we have to cancel this issue. We have to cancel this title because it's such a weird reprint to end on. Like
Hmm.
if you were going to end on it, why didn't you end it the issue with when they finally brought Sense Girl, where they voted Sense Girl back in, where they were like, okay, yes,
Yeah.
yay, Princess Projecta is back on the team. You know what I mean? Um, that felt more like a complete ending. But no, you're ending it on a cliffhanger of Starfinger,
Yeah.
right? So at some point, I have to admit the sales must have just tanked.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
That's what I figured as well.
yeah. Although they were in the letter columns earlier. They said the newsstand was always sold a lot more numbers, but maybe they just got returns on those or something. They were getting more and
Mm-hmm.
more returns or whatever. So I'm sure there's somewhere in some article a reason why Tails was finally discontinued.
Or, maybe the company decided we got too many books on the shelves and we got to cut some. I don't know
Yeah,
what else. That'd be interesting to find out, is if there were other titles that were cut around the same time.
sure. I mean, we are talking post-crisis, so not only are they ending a lot of things, but they're getting ready to start a lot of things, new titles, new characters. So I could see that. I could absolutely say, okay, this hardcover, softcover format, if you want to call it that, is not working anymore. So
Hmm. Hmm.
we've given it enough. Let's deal with it from here. So yeah, it's an odd choice. It's an odd scene. It doesn't feel like a final issue cover. I'm
Yeah.
always annoyed when final issues are not on a nice round number. 354, what is that? That is terrible. Could have gone 350, 355 even.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
60.
Peter, you and I are so much in sync. I was thinking exactly the same thing.
Uh, um, the Steve Lytle cover, good, fine. The Legion heads look like wrapping paper. There's there's so there's multiple versions of similar characters, and I almost
Yeah.
was or of the same characters.
Yeah. I was going to ask you what you thought about all those faces. And sorry, I think I said LaRoque earlier, but obviously it's
Oh,
Lytle.
yes,
Yeah.
Steve Lytle.
But yeah, exactly. It's like, well, we get the classic Legion floating heads that we've seen, in many issues over the years. Yet here we are with a bunch of repeats, a bunch of obscured faces, but it appears to be that most of these characters are our current Legion lineup, with a few exceptions. So I was curious what you thought about all this.
I thought maybe it was a trip through various eras of the Legion
Hmm.
because Brainiac 5 looks different in the two times that I think it's Brainiac 5. Like down below to the left corner, his hairstyle looks very young.
Oh,
If
okay. See,
if that's Brain, oh, maybe that's not Brainiac
I
5.
thought that was a young lightning lad. I was thinking the
It
same
might
thing.
be.
Is like that he was interspersing some previous versions of the Legionnaires in this, but he's not consistent about it.
Right.
There's only a few.
Right. It's a little haphazard.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know what to make of that other than Steve Lott is like, I'm going to do my best George Perez and just kind of just kind of run with a whole bunch of
Yeah.
floating heads.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Um, I said mostly, I think current Legion lineup, and yet Pharaoh Lad's in there just under the DC logo box. So I thought that was odd.
yeah. Like Colossal Boy has two images,
Mm-hmm.
one at the top of the star point and one covered by the thumb near the thumb. Um, yeah, I don't know. Quizlet's on twice.
Mm-hmm.
You can't block is on twice. Yeah, it's a little odd. I'm not.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about that, but that's
Yeah.
okay because it still
Yeah.
looks good.
And it doesn't. I mean, I guess maybe this is a way to depict the fact that here's this new Starfinger. He's a threat to the Legion, and the Legion being the heads back there. I guess
Yeah.
the innocent Legion is about to engage this new vicious version of Starfinger. Maybe I don't know.
By the way, I just looked it up. Even though the Legion, even though this volume of the Legion of the Tales is ending, the Teen Titans reprint title gets 7 more issues before it cancels. So they didn't cancel them together at the same time.
So I guess that solves the long standing argument about which one was the better seller, which
Maybe,
title.
maybe. And it does look like the only other one that they were doing this whole reprint thing with is Adventures of the Outsiders
Oh,
from
right. Mm-hmm.
because Batman and the Outsiders also became a hardcover, softcover thing, but that one
Mm-hmm.
had ended way early. I mean, I'm trying to look it up, and it's not even. I'm going. Oh, there it is. Ended with issue 46 back in March of '87. So quite a number of months before the Tales one. So
Mm-hmm.
so that dropped off first, then Legion, and then Titans.
So their great experiment came to an end.
Yeah, I mean that's almost 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? I guess at some point. Plus the market was probably changing, and
Yeah.
newsstands were kicking comics off their shelves because they weren't profitable,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the early '80s. They were already starting it in the early '80s or the late '70s when the whole direct market thing started. And then you figure by the late '80s, I mean, was I still getting stuff from newsstands at that point, or was I going to a dedicated? I was going to Golden Eagle by that point.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, me too.
yeah,
I had stopped many years before that actually,
yeah.
going to the local supermarket to get my comics.
How do you like the back cover of
Oh yeah.
Legion 29? Right there, boom, Cosmic Boy, his own
Yep.
spinning out of Legends, which we'll talk about later. That's a great cover by
Mm-hmm.
Lytle. Yeah.
I remember seeing that promo image. I was so excited to read a miniseries about one of my favorite Legionnaires.
Okay.
What, if you don't mind, I
Yeah,
want to add one more thing about the final issue of the Tales, um,
please.
because I've talked about this before. Uh, when they uh, launched the Tales title or rebranded the title as Tales Legion, and I knew that they were going to be reprinting this Baxter story or Baxter series in the Tales line. I had decided that I was just going to continue getting the Tales issues. One, because they were slightly cheaper, I think, at the time. And it was just, a nice run of comics instead of having it just, or yet another version of it.
Sure.
So had I continued that, because I didn't, uh, if you got to issue 354 and they're no longer doing that, I would have been ticked as a young collector. It's like, well, but I want the full thing. Why can't you just give me the full thing? And having to go and then continue on with the volume 3 version of it. And then I know me, I would have felt compelled to go get all of the Baxter issues from issue 1, which is exactly what I did, but not for this reason. and then got rid of just got rid of all my Tails issues. So, it just would have been. I feel bad for those late 1986 collectors who were getting the Tails issues, and then here's your final issue. So,
To be fair, uh, this is probably uh, just coincidence and happenstance. So if you would have picked up Tails issue 354 and realized it was the last one, and say you didn't go to back issues, but you were like, well, then I'm just going to go pick up what's the new Legion issue at that point.
mm-hmm.
The new Legion issue that came out the same month. Apparently there was two. Legion of Superheroes 41, which picks up the Starfinger storyline according to the cover anyway. So, but also issue 40 does as well. So really, I think it's 40 and 41. So, okay, maybe you'd miss a good chunk of issues with some good stories, but you're like, all right, well, at least I get this story connected.
What an amazing coincidence.
It's crazy. That's weird.
Or was it? Paul and his sticky notes and stuff. So maybe he planned that out.
So we go into the book itself. Do you want to start with your previous Starfinger notes? Educate me, because I was, as I mentioned, I didn't go back to read, even though I planned on it. I was a bad podcaster. So, what do you have in your notes about the previous Starfinger?
Not much. I don't have like a synopsis of what he did in these particular issues, but what I do have, Starfinger, his first appearance was in Adventure Comics 335 and a story in 336. So it's kind of a continuation there. Created by Edmund Hamilton and John Fort. This was the story where the character Starfinger appeared and was menacing the Legion because he was able to emit these different rays from each finger of his hand. So 5 different rays. So sort of like the Mandarin in Iron Man comics. But just out of his fingers. And it turns out that it was actually Lightning Lad that was Starfinger, but it was because he was being manipulated and controlled by Lars Hanscom. But it was Hanscom who altered. This was at the time that Lightning Lad had his robotic arm after he lost it, and Hanscom was a brilliant scientist because he was able to alter Lightning Lad's robotic arm to emit those different rays out of his fingers. So, although I don't know how you could, for example, turn electrical generation, which is Lightning Lad's power, of course, into a superpower neutralizer ray, or even to green kryptonite ray, things like that, which was part of the story. But Silver Age shenanigans aside, Hanscom was able to do that. I think he then appeared in, I think, I don't know if this is each and every appearance. These are just kind of like the major ones that I looked up. So he appeared in Superboy 200 that we talked about earlier, where there's I didn't read it word for word, but I flipped through that issue, and there was this convoluted plot for Hanscom again up to his plots to use a Legionnaire in some way. This time he wanted to use Duodamsel's duplication power to make more copies of himself and take over the galaxy, I guess. Of course, that did not work very well. And then and we talked about this already in the Legion of Superheroes annual volume 2, annual number 3, where he appeared and tried to again brainwash Lightning Lad to do his bidding, but then of course that did not work very well. And finally, now he's dead. So basically, what I gleaned from Hanscom is that every appearance that he's had in the Legion of Superheroes, every subsequent appearance, I should say, met with diminishing returns in terms of his character, either development, his threat to the Legion. He became actually, I would say, a joke.
Hmm.
By the end, he's like he had this master plan that was immediately quashed by who was it? Lightning Lad said, "Oh, Saturn Girl helped condition them against being mind manipulated, I guess." Right. And so, the Legionnaires have learned from their previous escapades and encounters with these villains, but yet the villain himself, just could not get past his own foibles, I guess.
And now he's dead, like you said.
Yep. And now he's
So
dead.
why did they call him the most? Mon-El's like, he's the most one of the dangerous Legion. I was
Right.
like, really? Has he been?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in that first appearance, yeah, under the guise of Lightning Lad, of course, but yeah, I mean, he fought the Legion basically to a standstill, and it was only because the Legion ends up being smarter than everybody and working together. And I mean, that's exactly it. It took a good chunk of the Legionnaires to end that threat in that first story, right? So I guess that would be why. And he did attack them again, but it's like, so have the Fatal Five, and so have the Infinite Man for that matter. And I would say he's a much more threatening character than Starfinger. So yeah, I found that bit of over dramatic characterization just jarring, and felt like we're being manipulated by being told this thing about a character, but it hasn't been demonstrated to us.
Yeah, especially in counter to that, when the other Legionnaires hear that Starfinger, hear the name Starfinger, and they're like, Starfinger. I took that as them going, that guy, as opposed to not like threat, like, oh no, Starfinger. It was more like,
Yeah.
who? Really? Him? So yeah, interesting. This Starfinger, what you mentioned about him being over the top, and I referenced even last issue about that Legion cartoon that has the subs and Starfinger, and now I can see, if they went back and read this version, that there is some. I mean, they amp him up to level 11 in the cartoon, so I could see it. There was something I liked about the first half of when we saw him, when he kept using little descriptors, right? Like the first time you see him, whenever he talks, he's like, punctuality, blah blah blah, simple, blah blah blah, rude, blah, like. Okay, so I was like, oh, good. He's giving him a quirk. He's giving him a personality, a characterization, whatever you want to say. Already makes him feel a little standoffish, or just different, Unfortunately, it kind of dropped. There might have been one or two more instances of that, but then it really kind of, by the end, he was just, like you said, a maniacal villain. There was no more of like, of that character speech that I actually really liked, because then at least it gave us a hook into the character, and something about his mind is working differently. So I did like that, but then they dropped it, so I was like, oh.
I just can't get over. So that that scene that you're talking about when he's first introduced, where he's talking to Galadron is the character's name. But don't remember that because he's dead by the next page. The punishment doesn't fit the crime is my issue with this. So yeah, I totally agree with you. The way that he's talking, the way that it gives him a sense of he's got some things going on in his brain. But then he lashes out because he feels the guy was very impertinent and kills him for it. It's like, I can understand, if you break the guy's leg, so to speak, to be threatening, but don't murder him. I mean, what kind of message does that send to your operatives, to your the people you hire to do these kind of odd jobs, around the universe, right? So
Well,
it's just,
it's you don't look at Harley Quinn when Joker's around, or you're gonna get killed. Like how think of the Burton Batman. Jack Nicholson was killing his henchmen left and right. You know.
Which I also thought was stupid. I know I get your point. It's it's really to punctuate a certain quality of the character, but it's just for like I said, I'm gonna say it one last time. Hopefully the last time. It just doesn't make any sense from a business perspective to kill all your underlings. I realize he's not killing them all, but I mean, it's like, come on.
And not in an interesting way. Like if he was killing him and it gave us a taste of his power set right now is just very generic. I don't
Mm-hmm.
find anything very interesting. Okay, so he leaves some brands on their faces, and okay, that's fine. But uh, and I did like then his arrangements guy is like, oh well, I'm gonna do this unless you have a wiser plan, boss. Don't kill me. you know, so some of his henchmen learn, and other ones do not. Um, uh, Paul Levitt's just showing us what it's like to work in the organization that is Starfinger. But you're right; it doesn't. It falls a little flat. It
Yeah.
feels like we've been here before.
Yeah, I just noticed. So you mentioned. I'm looking at those 2 pages we're talking about. Um, he said punctuality, and he goes on simple, uh, rude, and then on the next page, reasonable, regrettable. He almost always starts with this punctuated word, this declaration.
Hmm.
So I admit that's kind of an interesting character trait.
I wish he would have kept it up because speaking of Legion of Superheroes Annual number 3, the Curse issue, where you talked about Hanscom tried to take over Lightning Lad. That was the issue they were trying to raise Mordru,
Mm.
and he had disciples, and one of them always talked in questions, and then there was another one that always seemed to talk almost like in scripture. I think it started like with like yay da 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 yay da da, like something about that person's dialogue also was very different. I love when writers do that with
Hmm.
characters, when they spend a little time and they try to make their voices different. Um, Normally, like in the '90s, you would get that because they color the word balloons or they shape it differently, and they did that in this era too. But for me, when you get dialogue like that, okay, now you're teasing me because you're not following through by the end, unless it's a character choice that he purposely is dropping it. But I don't get any of that right now.
Yeah, and I just flipped through to see how he's speaking in the rest of the issue, and he does it a few more times in the way that we've described. But yeah, it kind of falters. It tapers off a little bit, and he
Yeah,
just becomes more like a I'm a really bad guy, and I'm gonna tell you that I'm a really bad guy type of bad guy.
right, right. There on page 19, intolerable. That's the only word he says because there, after that, it's just, and we get to learn a little bit. He wants to take over the universe. Probably the only other interesting thing, which might relate to other things that are going on in this issue, is that, okay, the Legion has stopped his operation or interrupted his operations on Mars, where he has this protection racket. And he knows he has to do something about the Legion, but he can't do it on Earth. He
Mm-hmm.
gave his word.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh,
But does this guy seem like a guy who worries about whether he's given his word or not?
I think so. I think, like honor among thieves, no, we aren't shown any of that. I'll give
Yeah.
you that. We're absolutely not shown. I just have to go by the dialogue,
Yeah.
Paul Levitz. And I'm assuming he gave his word to Universal. I'm
Mm-hmm.
assuming that's what this is about.
Yeah.
But my memory is, I don't remember what's going to happen.
And see that right there is much more menacing to me than this guy, right? Because here's this bombastic, deadly, uh, uh, villain, and he's not going to touch Earth because of this other thing that's going on, right? And that, to me, that's a much more interesting plot point at this juncture as we're reading through these issues
Mm-hmm.
than what we're being shown in this issue.
And that's the plot point that on my second and third read really started to stand out more and more. Um, Everything that's happening underneath with, and I don't know why I didn't get it I got it with one of the instances. So when Element Lad is talking to Tellus and Wildfire, White Witch, and Quizlet, and said that Tellus's people specifically asked for you
Yeah,
for.
yeah.
And I'm thinking, right, because of the atmosphere on Tellus's world, Quizlet probably doesn't need to breathe, Wildfire doesn't need to breathe, White Witch has a spell, blah, blah, blah. But then I was like, oh, someone specifically asked for these Legion. Oh, Ambassador Relnick
Yes.
specifically asked for Mon-El, Ultra Boy, heavy hitters, and Block.
Mm-hmm.
I assume another heavy hitter, you know. I went back to that Tellus scene and I thought, clearly what's happening is divide and conquer.
Yep.
Universo is dividing and conquer. He's going to divide the Legion to the point where Element Lad even says there's only 9 active Legionnaires available, which worries him, rightly so. Maybe we can talk about what kind of leadership is it that he doesn't recognize that this is happening. But I mean,
yeah,
it's
true.
But it's coming from Ambassador Relnick, and it's coming from Tellus's people. Like,
yep.
Why would you think, right?
It's very legitimate requests.
Yeah. And the thing about the Tellus's group, I was okay. So yes, it probably has to do with the atmosphere. But then I was also thinking, why those 4? And if you think of Universo, are those characters a telepath? Quizlet, who knows what the hell he is? Wildfire, because he doesn't necessarily have a brain, and White Witch, who might be able to, like, are those 4 that the minute you try to do something with them, are they going to be like, whoa, 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 whoa? Could they be early warning signs if Universo tried to do something, you know? Whereas like Timberwolf, he's like, I got Timberwolf, no problem, you know? Or on the other hand, Mon-El and Ultra Boy, I need to get them to me now, because if they get any hint, I'm done and over. But these 4, it's like sort of wiping. So what do you think about that? Like, did you have any thoughts about?
Just the same. I had the same thought. It's like, I'm really curious, about the specifics of it. Why these characters? What role do they play in his machinations? Or is it just simply to remove them from the board while he takes over Earth and does what he does with the remaining Legionnaires?
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah, it's just I'm just mostly looking forward to seeing how this actually plays out.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned Wildfire specifically, because of the letter column in about issue 29 is in one of the Universal Project issues. You can't help but see the cover of it, and Wildfire is on the cover. So
and Tellus.
Oh, right.
So both of them together.
Oh yes, yeah, very prominently. So yeah, now I'm doubly intrigued. It's like, what the heck? Why set this up and then you see this? So what's going on?
It's so hard to look at the letter columns in a later issue about the one we're talking about and opening from the back, because it's like I don't want to go from the front because
that's what I do.
I don't want to spoil anything. Even though those are issues I've read, my memory of them is very faulty.
And see, I think I've said this before. I've not read the Universal Project, so
that's awesome
at all. So I don't want to be spoiled by flipping through the letter column.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and like we said, that was the most interesting part, was to see this development of the see this early stage stuff and realize, I just took it for granted that it was in those 4 issues, but no, there's obvious buildup. We've read previous buildup with the Science Police and with Ron Vidar getting taken off the map, and now this Atmos, right? Atmos has disappeared.
Right. All the science, other heroes too, and the Science Police officers, which we get that mention via Tellus. So
and now this
something big is happening.
dividing of the Legion. It's like, oh, this is great. This is fun. Like I'm
Yeah.
that part of this issue is really enjoyable.
One of the things that I said I mentioned earlier, there's a few things in here that I really enjoyed about this issue.
Hmm.
One of them is we continue. There's through thread which was highlighted last issue regarding Magnetic Kid and Polar Boy, and Telos. Polar Boy mentions Telos too, but Telos is going to do something else.
Hmm.
But this whole idea of Magnetic Kid um, uh, uh, trying to better himself as a Legionnaire, become a better Legionnaire, and in this issue, there's a lot of spotlight on Magnetic Kid.
Yeah, our boy,
Uh,
our punching bag
our
gets
punching exactly right. And I have to say I'm now kind of changing my mind about Magnetic Kid a little
oh,
bit.
come on. One issue?
No, come on. I mean, look at what he's doing. You know, he's really trying. He's pushing his limits. He's failing a little bit. I mean, that scene. I forget which page that is, but the scene where they go against. I think first go up against those goons that I mentioned on
Hmm.
Mars.
Page six
Uh,
and seven and eight.
yeah, yeah. You know, he gets overwhelmed by what is it? One, two, three. It looks like just four of them, and you know, he's like, "Polar Boy, help!" You know, that doesn't look good. That's not a good look for a Legionnaire. But then, you know, the rest of the issue, he's redeemed himself somewhat by saving all those people from that building, the resort that's being blasted by the satellite. He is. They're concerned about him getting buried under the rubble, you know, possibly dead, and yet, you know, he just uses his powers to just hurdle everything off of him. You know, that's pretty cool. And then later, when Starfinger attacks yet again, the guy doesn't learn. You know, he goes up against his own people, other Brilliants, and you know, hands their asses to him
Hmm.
in a a very cool cosmic boy way. You know, so I really dug how they are progressing Magnetic Kid's character, his the aspect of him as a Legionnaire, as a hero, in especially in this issue. So I'm hoping that we continue to see that, and it's not just this issue now, you know, announces Magnetic Kid as the premier Legionnaire that he wants to be, and we never see anything else of it again. So I hope that's not the case.
Yeah. Hope there's no backtracking,
Exactly. I
especially.
mean,
Yeah.
you know, it would be nice to see him continue to struggle, and it would be actually be nice if we saw that a little bit more in other Legionnaires. You know,
Hmm.
it's not just him, but you know, I
Invisible
guess,
Kid too, kind of
yeah,
sometimes, he, yeah.
yeah, I guess, yeah. You
Um,
know, you're right. And tell us, we just don't. There's not much done with him. Well, Quizlet for that matter. So you know, the newer Legionnaires, you know, there just hasn't been much done with him. So this is
yeah.
a refreshing look at someone new, even though he's legacy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice. It was a way to wrap up or at least put a like you said a spotlight, but I feel like even if they do wrap it up with him, I'm okay with that, and like from here on if they show that at least he's a little more he's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be so whiny about it, for
Well,
lack of
yeah, that I would, yeah, I agree with you totally on that part.
yeah. What I liked about it too, because it starts off right away, right on page 6, like he's stopping that ship that's escaping, and Polar Boy's right there, and it's like almost like coaching him and saying, "Go, do your job." But what I liked about it is not only is Polar Boy on his back to almost be like, just be a Legionnaire, like just stop, get out of your head and be a Legionnaire, because there's that scene on like page 11 where they go all the other Legionnaires sort of just act, right, like they just go and do things, and Magnetic Kid sort of in the background. Then there's the other scene where on page 21 and 22 when the cruiser attacks, and again the Legionnaires just jump right into action, but he's like, boy, how could they get a cruiser? And I think, who is it, some boy is saying, dude, stop asking questions, go do your job. So in reflecting his naivete, him being an amateur against all of these other established, and especially Polar Boy. I mean, Polar Boy is experienced. I mean, they have that great scene where it's page 10 where Magnetic Kid's like, he's bemoaning his lack of experience, and Polar Boy's like, look, you'll get there. Like I'm doing with you, like I'm doing with Tellus. And he's like, all right, what would you do with Tellus? So easy. I'd go have him coach with Saturn Girl. Like Polar Boy is on it, right? He knows what to do. Him and Sun Boy take down the cruiser. He knows what to do with his powers. That was nice. It was nice to see the Legionnaires knowing and jumping into action against an amateur who's still sort of questioning and going and staying in the background. So that when he does have his moment, because we almost get like 4 different scenes with him, even though they're small, by the 4th one, you're right. He's just like, I'm doing it, especially because they're his people. So if he gets punked by other Braillians, he doesn't deserve to be on the Legion. It's
Very
true. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
yeah.
So that was nice. That was, as I was reading it and kept getting scene after scene, I was like, oh, look at our boy growing up. Finally, Levitt's finally doing something with him.
Wait, so you mentioned Polar Boy, of course. That was one of the other aspects about this issue I really liked. His comfort level of being a mentor and being comfortable in his own skin, i.e., as a Legionnaire, as a hero. This is one of the reasons I love Polar Boy. Demonstrating his capabilities, in some ways untapped yet. And I'm wondering, is Levitz starting to build him up for something down the road? Because previously, whenever we've seen a Legionnaire kind of mentor another one, it's usually Wildfire that does it. Mm-hmm. And, Wildfire kind of has this, I don't know if it's even an official capacity, where he's, we saw him testing Quizlet not too long ago, right? But I remember in previous issues and other versions of the Legion titles where he's kind of taken over new recruits or potential recruits and all that kind of stuff. So it's nice to see a different character take on that role. It's nice to see that the Legionnaires don't always have to fit within their own silos on the team.
Right. And he's a fan favorite, right? Polar Boy is Wally West getting the upgrade to join the Justice League. Mm-hmm. He's been a leader. Not that Wally was a leader, but Polar Boy was a leader. He was rejected, but then a leader, and certainly shows that he has the confidence and the power. I love on page 20, he's like, rest assured, we Legionnaires are absolutely prepared to deal with any eventuality that might arise, and then they get attacked. But I believe it from him, right? Like, I believe there's something about the Polar Boys. It all goes back to issue 14 where he walked into those tryouts and said, give me my spot. Like that. Lightning Lass and Polar Boy both came in with swag and energy and
demanded their due.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think whereas with Lightning Lass, that's been demonstrated time and time again throughout her rejoining the team. Polar Boy hasn't really, I don't think, gotten that spotlight quite yet. But I think, like I said, I think we're starting to see that a little bit.
He's been used quite a lot, though. Like he keeps showing up in these issues. And art-wise, page 25 through 27, which I'm sure you probably have thoughts, the whole fight between Magnetic Kid versus the Braillians. I read one review of this issue where they thought that was a very confusing fight scene. I just took it as this is LaRocque trying to stretch, or maybe it's the Inkers, I don't know, trying to stretch their ideas of what magnetic power could look like. And you get different forms of it. Sometimes you get straight lines. Sometimes you get angular lines. Sometimes you get circles, bubbles almost. And I loved the one sequence where where Magnetic Kid is in between two forces. And then he uses his power to kind of like, whoop, just kind of slide right out of it, and all the different uses of powers are different. They're designed differently in that panel. Mm-hmm. So little artistic, and I was kind of like, yay, okay, I want that from LaRoque. I want him to
Yes.
be not so linear, two dimensional, whatever you want. I don't know what you want. I want him to take chances, and that sequence was him taking chances. Now you may not like it, it may not work for you, fine, but at least he's trying something.
Well, and uh, we've seen this display of magnetic powers before with Giffen, and maybe not to this extent, but definitely we've seen that kind of like that circular pattern usage. So I appreciated that continuity of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I agree. I think LaRoque was really trying to expand on that. Um, that last panel on page 26, where he is in between the two, Magnetic Kitty is in between the two brilliants. Uh, you see all these concentric circles, but then you see these little arcs, these little spikes
Spikes,
in there
yeah.
too, where to me, I read that as that's interference from the others. It's a very subtle expression in this, but I dug it. I thought that was a really cool way to show in because we're constrained by this the dimensions of this one panel and how packed it is with characters and what's going on. But that was a wonderful way of showing that interaction between the two sets of powers, as
Yeah.
opposed to the next panel, which is a bunch of circles from three different characters. Which I'm not saying that's bad. It's just a nice contrast between how to express this display of magnetism. Yeah.
And you have to wonder too, even though they all can control magnetism, I'm not a science person. Is there, just like there are different frequencies and vibrations, are there different ways to control magnetism, like different aspects of magnetism that, I can't imagine they all use their power the same way or tap into the same way of using it, if
Well,
that makes
we
sense.
we have seen Cosmic Boy specifically in previous issues of the title, um, maybe the previous volume, in fact, where he's used Earth's magnetic field to propel him instead of using his flight ring. And he's always been shown as the most powerful, the most adept at using his people's magnetic powers.
Hmm.
So I think you're right. I think in my head canon, each Brilliant has probably a baseline. Everybody has the same baseline, but then those who hone their skills, or maybe even are genetically disposed to having slightly variation, some different controls over their powers, right? And so that's what I think that's what kind of what we're seeing here. There's that on page 27, that third panel in, where we see that it looks like webbing
Hmm.
coming out of Magnetic Kid, and that's I think that's a new way of showing that power, So I thought I thought he did a really good job on that.
Yeah. So good for Magnetic Kid.
Since we're talking about art, can I point out a few things I thought were
Sure.
interesting? So those goons on Mars, LaRoque was really channeling Kirby to me on that. And then there's a panel of showing Polar Boy later in the issue.
When
What
when
page is
he's
that?
wrestling with the goon.
A little bit, but page 11, where he's just kind of flying up towards. Oh yeah, this is when the satellite is blasting the resort, and just the way that Polar Boy's face is drawn with the inks, and I don't know, is that Arn Star? Is that DeCarlo? I think it's DeCarlo the way this looks, but just it looks very Kirby-esque. But and then on the very first page, I don't know if you noticed this, Shadowless's face, that look of disgust that she has, superbly drawn by Lytle and the inker, whichever inker it was. It's just I that is probably the most expressive I've seen Shadowlass in this series so far. It was wonderful.
There was an art aspect that I really liked, also tying into this whole conversation about uh, you know Magnetic Kid learning his role versus these very established Legionnaires, page 14. My girl, Phantom Girl, when she goes up to the satellite. No thought whatsoever. This giant, powerful satellite, and she's like, maybe if I tickle it here and I rotate this, and then boom, oh, good. She's like, no fear in her
Yeah.
whatsoever. And I love that second panel, the coloring to it, the drawing of it, the
Mm-hmm.
LaRoque line work and the inking of it. That is beautiful. And you get that she's a phantom, sort of, you get it. Just that's really, really great. I did write initially in one of my preliminary thoughts, I said this was a very stuffed issue art wise. I don't mean that in a bad way, with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of a lot of smaller panels, very little in the way of splash pages, unlike last issue where things were much more open, it felt like. um Whether that's because Levitz just has a fuller script and more
Mm-hmm.
characters and things going on, but it worked. I didn't find any of it too confusing, even if maybe the choices aren't, for no pun intended, if the choices aren't stellar, you know, under work it out, folks. Under, like, say, like Byrne or Perez, in the '80s, or even Simon, like maybe we would have gotten some whatever. I don't know. I'm fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
Reading these issues, my eyes have adjusted to LaRoque style, and now when I see things like this page, I'm like, yeah, I like that. I like that a
Mm-hmm.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's really coming into his own here finally. And enough time perhaps has passed that we're kind of forgetting Lytle's work and our appreciation of it. So yeah, exactly. We're liking LaRocque a little more, I think, overall.
So here's an article from 2009 I just looked up about Arn Starr. In the 80s and 90s, he was one of the busiest inkers in comics, a protege of Dick Giordano, which I think
Ah,
DeCarlo was too, right? I thought we read that somewhere in
hmm.
one of his bios. He worked on Legion of Superheroes, Nexus, Star Trek, and Sax and Violins, which is a George Perez, Peter David George Perez miniseries.
The start when you said starter, oh yeah, that's where I know that name from. Finally, okay.
Apparently did uncredited work on Crisis. Surprise to me.
Wow.
Um, he left the business in the mid 90s and then became an actor. Some of his more recognizable appearances are as an attending physician on Grey's Anatomy
No.
and an artist at the Sterling Cooper Agency on Mad Men.
Hmm.
You can also see him in episodes of CSI, Jericho, Sleeper Cell, Bones, and a semi-regular member on My Name is Earl. How odd, right?
I'm gonna have to go look this up. My daughter's a huge Grey's Anatomy fan, so I'll have to look up his appearances there.
Yeah, yeah. In the image they have of him from Mad Men, he looks like your dad's version. He looks like a dad version of Rod Serling.
Oh, okay.
That suit and all that. I don't know, he got a cigarette. Yeah. What I was trying to look up is if any of these inkers, DeCarlo or Arnstar, had experience with Kirby art,
Mm-hmm.
because I see a lot of Kirby influence.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Just some other little mini thoughts. I'm just going to go from the start of my notes. I think we're kind of wrapped up with this issue, surprisingly.
I have one more page I really want to talk about, but yeah,
Okay.
me too.
Um, just seeing Monel and Shady and not realizing that they've been on vacation since issue 23 was kind of mind-boggling. There's so many characters in this book that I didn't even realize that they have not been around.
You're right.
We saw them in 23, 24, and then that's it. We did get okay, so we should talk about Tellus's homeworld. We got some background on Tellus's homeworld, Hycraeus. We actually got to see the Great Mother Ocean, his other people. Of course, they all look alike. That whole Star Trek homogenous view of
Mm-hmm.
aliens. But that he was then visited by the Gildishpan, and because they have very similar physiologies, it's like, yeah, right. He's always Zamir is always in a bubble of atmosphere, water, whatever. So that was cool. But that they,
And sorry, and they have telepathy in common.
oh right, yeah, yeah, I didn't even think about that. And then that until then, his people, Tellus's people, didn't even know that there was a whole other world, universe out there.
Yeah, yeah. What
Crazy.
was he say? We had never seen the light of a single star.
That makes sense
Yeah,
when you talk about his atmosphere. So yeah, so I guess so that means if Tellus is kind of like a fish, Zamir's kind of like one of those sea cucumbers, right? He looks like
mm.
a gross, one of those gross little. Yeah, yeah.
Now, Peter,
Interesting.
don't be specious.
Oh yes, I know. Boy, they are specious in this book. Monel, right? When he's like, "Oh, look at Labyrinth. Yeah, we got to have some place to put our trash." And then Magnetic Kid says the same thing about trash. I don't know if he's talking about the thugs or his fellow Braillians, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
he also mentions the word trash. And I was like, wow, look at
Yeah,
this 30th century.
that seems like a writer's issue. Echo, a word echo that I think Levitt's, because we've seen that word used
Hmm.
multiple times over various issues.
We're both Star Trek fans. It's a brilliant small moment in Star Trek 6 where one of the
Yes.
admirals, where he says it, right? He's like, why should we have to clean up the trash of the universe? And Bones throws him a look.
Mm-hmm.
One small little, they cut to Bones, and he's just like, why are you using that? I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, that's great.
Yeah.
Great characterization there. Yeah. So when I hear that word coming from Legionnaires, you know, what's your page that you
Well, first, let me ask you this. On page 11, 12, sorry, the Legionnaires are the resort's being attacked by that satellite, and they're going in to save people. Looks like a big dance hall or something. I don't know what it
or
is.
casino or
Casino.
something?
Yes,
Yeah,
thank
sort of
you.
like Las
That's the
Vegas.
better one.
Yeah.
Um, on the left of that is this black and white image of a face, a man's face,
Hmm.
and who the hell is that? That is very. That's not stylized. That's not a recognizable character. That is. I suspect someone from who worked on the book.
It looks like
But
they
I.
have a collar,
Mm-hmm.
very high. I thought it was maybe a movie from the time, but I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah, or yeah, I thought that too. I'm like, oh, but I cannot place who that looks like.
Yeah.
So I was curious if you knew.
No.
Okay.
No. That I was kind of disappointed in that crowd scene because under Lido, under Giffen, we would have gotten some Easter
Oh
eggs
yes.
there.
Yep.
And
I scoured this book for things like that, and I didn't.
yeah.
I didn't notice anything.
You could sort of say the three cat girls, one of them is like Cheetah, the other one's like Cheetah, the other one's like Wildcat, the female
Mm.
Wildcat. And of course, Sunboy has to rescue those three out of all the people. He can't rescue the
I hadn't
other
even noticed that.
aliens. Yeah, he goes right for the cat girls. Like,
Yep.
come on,
Yep.
Sunboy.
I was my mind went to Josie and the Pussycats, which is
Oh yeah.
yeah, cat dressing performers. So
Yeah, you're probably
they're
yeah,
on a stage. So
that's right.
anyway, okay. So my favorite thing about this entire issue is the scene between Dream Girl and Element Lad on page
Okay,
9.
okay, good. Yeah, I was wondering if we were going to talk about that.
and and so it's mostly the art that I'm responding to, the display of the emotions, or the hiding of the emotions that's going on here. I thought this was probably LaRoque's finest hour so far in how granted, I will say how I'm interpreting what Dream Girl is going through, the pain that she's feeling, if she's feeling pain, right? I think she is. I think she's going through some emotional turmoil,
Hmm.
and she's reacting to that. And anyway, so uh, we get in that first panel. If you don't mind, I'm gonna go panel by panel here.
Sure.
That first panel, we see her. She's kind of leaned up against the wall, but she's kind of it's a bit of a um,
Playing with her
uh,
hair.
well, yeah, exactly. She's flirting here, definitely already. Not just in the in, in the way that she looks just generally, but she's, I don't know, it's what's the word I'm trying to think of? Not exotic, evocative, maybe. The way that she's posed there, like you said, playing with her hair, she's got this slight smile on her face, right? And then but then the next one, when Element Lad's talking to her, she's walking towards him now, but notice the way that her facial expression, the way that she's got her arms kind of behind her. I took that to be she's being very tentative. She's unsure of what she's about to do. And then we get that next, the third panel, a close up of her face, and this is an image of Dream Girl I don't think we've ever seen her displayed this way. And she's got her usual hair is covering her face, right? So we only see one eye, but the way that her mouth, the way her eye is drawn, what she's talking about, it's not so much the words, but kind of the way that she's addressing Element Lad. But that, to me, she looks very vulnerable in this panel, and almost as if we're really seeing her for the first time, not this facade that she always has on, but this is very, very close to her. The only problem with this, I will admit, is the way that she's talking to Element Lad. That those two things don't quite jibe. Because of course, then the next panel we go from this, like I said, those two panels where she's approaching him, she seems unsure of herself, she looks very vulnerable, but then she resorts back to her usual nature, which is to be aggressive sexually, or at least intimating that. She even caresses his face, right? And she's very much in his face with her body. But and I'm probably reading too much into this. Her face is obscured in the image, for us as the reader. Her hair is covering her face. Her face is mostly in shadow. She's hiding her true self here. She's being the dream girl that everybody expects her to be in this moment. But given what we just saw in those previous two panels, to me, this is very much, she's put up that wall again. And then even in that final panel, when she walks away after her proposition to Element Lad, we don't see her face. We only see the back of her. Again, reinforcing that she's walking away at the moment. She's made the proposition. Now she's walking away, and that wall is definitely put in place. It's there. Or she's retreating. She's made the proposition, and now she's going to go away real quick because this is maybe uncomfortable to her. Maybe she really doesn't want this. Who knows? But I just found all of that just to be wonderfully displayed, wonderfully drawn, depicted by the artists. Or maybe she's just really into Element Lad, and I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
I think it's to go on to continue your thought process, because I wrote down in my notes, she's clearly rebounding, right? Starboy's gone.
Yeah.
Not to make this sound shallow, but she has nobody who is fawning over her the way Starboy would, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe she feels like she needs to remember that she is Dream Girl. She is the Dream Girl, right? So I could see her missing. She misses Starboy. She misses the attention. You'd have to imagine, this is clearly headcanon because it's not on the page, the other Legionnaires are probably being real cautious around her because Starboy is leaving. So nobody's going to pick a fight. Nobody's going to try to joke with her. Like we don't know what kind of mood she's in, even if she is Dream Girl, even if she is very, sure of herself. So it could very well be she's doing this because she just needs to remember who she is, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Especially now that she's single again, for lack of a better description. So yeah, I feel like because I thought it was like, what is this scene? We don't need, like, I hope it's not glorifying, but no, if we think about where she left off last issue, she's gotta she's gotta move on and reclaim who she is, even if it comes across false, because
Mm-hmm.
she's like, well, she know of all the people she flirts with the most chaste legionnaire who is tied to Siobhan Aaron. She knows he's not going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't
Exactly.
do that to some boy, you know. She didn't do that to Timberwolf, who would be a puppy in her lap in 5 seconds, you know. She did it with the leader of the Legion, who is very spiritual and who is wrapped up in another person. So she's like, "Oh, this is going to be safe. I just need to stretch my muscles a little bit."
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was a very interesting scene. Um, on an art note, I had the chance to look at some original art for this issue, which I neglected to send to you. But uh, LaRoque made a little notation. The colorist on page 9 it was instructed to add blush on Element Lad's cheeks. Well, we got some blush.
Yeah. Did we ever?
Jeez. It could have been a little subtle, you know, but no.
I was thinking, boy, Carl Gafford usually gets everything right, and this was a major misstep.
The other little notes I saw too was how to design Starfinger's bowl, his little helmet, and
Mm-hmm.
how to design what's going on inside. So on the
Ah,
original
yes.
on the original art, I really should have sent this to you. I apologize that I didn't. Um, the on the original art, other than the black line, it's all empty. All of those little circlets and all those little energy crackles and things like that is purely done by the color artist.
Mm.
So there are just empty spaces there, and then they layer that over later, right? It's not even in the original artwork.
Ah, okay.
LaRoque, I think he wanted to do lines, sort of like radiating lines, almost like a kid would draw off of a sun.
Yeah.
But the colorist decided to go with Kirby dots, basically. And we see that same thing all over the place, like on page 13, coming off of uh, the fire in the background, like it's all like that magenta color, which is a layer.
Mm.
It's just everywhere. Very different from, say, like Element Lad's costume, where it's actually part of the costuming, you know. So
Oh, I didn't even realize that. So when that when that beam is hitting the building, yeah, we see all that Kirby crackle around. That ties it directly to him.
mhm.
Yeah, wow.
So good, you know, like it was kind of nice seeing some of the notes, you know, on the original art. There were some spelling errors that they had to adjust, or a word was missing.
Hmm.
Um, some of the panels, the very tiny panels. Let me see on page 16, panel 2. Oh no, on page 16, panel 2, for some reason, LaRoque was instructed to redraw that entire panel. So I don't know what it originally looked like, but when you look at the original art, you can clearly see that that panel was attached to the original art.
Ah.
And then where is it? On page 8, the third panel, that Sunboy panel. In the original art, it originally had gone beyond the borders of the other panels above it and below it. So they instructed, you can see again, it's an insert on top of the original art. They probably shrank it down or redrew it so that it would be in line
Hmm.
with the other panel borders. So really interesting stuff going on in the original artwork, um, when you can see those little notes. I really dig that. There's some places where the black star field. So like page 14, when Phantom Girl is fighting that beam, that middle panel, the horizontal panel, space in the background, that was done by the colorist. So in the original art, it's all white. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But then you flip the page to 16, and LaRocque did draw the space lines and it's all black on the original art. Or
Really?
there's
Wow.
marks where he's, yeah. So it's so interesting to see how they handle, especially in the 80s, background coloring, background imaging.
Yeah. I would have assumed all of it would have been done by the color artist.
Yeah. So I'll send you those links. I apologize. I didn't send it before.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the Relnick and the Dominator, the Dominion scene, but that's going to play out, I assume, in Universo Project. It's just always interesting to see the Dominion, the Dominators, because they're so well that where they're all over the place in the 5 years later, right? So any vision, whenever I see them previous to that, I'm like, ooh, what are they up to? And then I wrote Starfinger gets the last word in the entire issue, but I wrote this. Is there supposed to be a mystery? Did you get the sense that there's a mystery of who he is, or did you just consider it like a design choice that we don't see his face?
I would no. I think there's a mystery there. Even to the point where when the scene shifts and we get the caption box, the transition caption box to explain where we're at, that Levitz likes to throw in there all the time. One was on a distant or near a distant star or something like that, right? So it's just like he's really couching this character in secrecy or obfuscation at the very least. So yeah, given the visual and then things like that, it's just like, well, yeah, at the very least, Levitz is really trying to play up this mystery of who this character is, whether or not it's a that's earned or even desired on our part. That depends. It remains to be seen. But
Yeah, yeah.
I will add, since we're talking about Starfinger again, in the Legion Companion, there is we're talking about art a lot in this issue too, but I wanted to see if there's any mention of the Starfinger, and there's a very brief thing in here. So Greg LaRocque was asked, there were a few new villains introduced during your run. Were those characters your designs? And the very first thing he responds with is Starfinger. I designed Starfinger. Paul would just dig these guys up and rewrite them and reintroduce them. And it's one of the things that I really did enjoy doing, taking the old characters and giving them a modern spin. And he talks about some others that he did that with too, Time Trapper included.
Modern spin. Okay.
Modern. Do you not think that for late 1986 that would be a modern design?
I think it's weird. I don't know what it is. I just it feels like an amalgamation of different ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
We already said the Mysterio helmet, the tunic. I mean, it's consistent. I guess you keep mentioning the character is flamboyant. He's I guess it makes sense. Does it make sense for a crime boss? I don't know.
Yeah, right. Again, it's just we got these two different versions of this character. He's the guy who's running this apparently a large organization, criminal organization, and yet he's this costume wearing, star zapping lunatic. I guess you could be both. That works, I guess.
Sure. And it seems like the Rogue only gets a handle of what the 4 stars on his tunic. It's like initially they're all over the place, and then
I noticed that too. Mm-hmm.
And then by the end, midway through, there's a little bit of an established pattern. But okay, I mean, we're just gonna have to wait till issue 40, like I said, until we get this guy back again.
And I will end my notes with this, unless you have other things, Peter. In the letter column in issue 34, I found it very interesting. A couple letter writers, Barry and Bill, talking about Starfinger. Let's see here. Barry here from Owings Mills, Maryland. The simple fact is, however, that the new Starfinger is a great Legion foe. He is a quiet psychopath and is violent enough to be dangerous. He talks about what he did, killing the rude mercenary and his assistant, whom he seemed to favor. This proves his violent nature and mental instability. I will agree with that. I don't know about the whole quiet psychopath thing. And then Bill, where's Bill? Bill from Chicago, Illinois. He says, I like the costume design. It is more fitting than the originals and is rather refreshing attitude.
Yeah, they took a liking to him.
I'm surprised, but okay.
Right. Who are we to judge the Levitts?
That's true. I feel like I've poked at Starfinger far too much in this episode, so I apologize to the listeners.
Oh no, that's okay. Let's venture into the back half of our usual format here, taking a look at Legion of Superheroes throughout the DC universe, starting with Who's Who number 22, Legends number 2, and finally putting to rest Superpowers volume 3.
Oh, thank God.
Number 4. So let's start with Who's Who 22, taking a look at Stone Boy, Sun Boy, the Sun Eater, and then we threw in there Supergirl, maybe Superman, but we wasn't really much with that one. So let's start with Mr. Stone Boy, art by Richard Bruning and Carl Kiesel. What did you learn? What do you like? Anything jump out with Stone Boy?
Well, so Stone Boy is one of those substitute characters where, he's a bit of a joke, right? Because he turns to stone and just stands there. Yet, I think it's noted in here, he won membership to the Legion of Superheroes and rejected it because he wanted to stay with his buddies in the subs, right? So of course I had to go look at the issue in which he earned that membership, and it was this big contest after the subs, after the Legion found out about the subs. So this is in Adventure Comics 315.
Oh, so not long after his first appearance. Adventure Comics 306.
Yeah, exactly. And so they did this big long. As the Legion does, they like to test their potential members out.
God, they're such assholes. I swear.
They are. There was a scoring system, and even though, this approach usually, or they use this approach a lot, I think, in the Silver Age Legion stories, where the Superboy actually, and Supergirl, I believe too, they did this with, where they actually failed in their maybe not Superboy definitely, but they failed to prove themselves, so to speak, in this situation, and yet because of the way that they conducted themselves or some other shenanigans against them by the Legionnaires, they ended up proving themselves to the Legionnaires. And Stone Boy was no different. He failed to perform the task that he was given, but in the way that he did it, that earned him extra points because it proved that he was more concerned about helping others or not. I forget the details now, but not exacerbating the situation to his own downfall in terms of getting the membership. So he actually got more points, not that many more, against the second runners up, who were Polar Boy and Night Girl.
Oh, interesting.
Who tied in that contest. So, I was thinking, well, first of all, it's really cool that probably the most jokey sub is the one who actually got asked to join the Legion, but he, like I said, he refused and stayed with the subs. What if he had joined and there was no need for block, right? Would he have been more effective than block? Because what does block do besides talk to Timberwolf?
Yeah, but what does Stone Boy do? He just stands there.
I know. It's exactly it. It's like that in the Legion universe, people who are stone or turn to stone don't get a lot of love in the narrative.
What do? You tell him to turn to stone. You paint a door on him, and a criminal decides to go through you, and then bonk. Like just like Wile E. Coyote.
Well, that might work on villains like Starfinger.
Yes.
No, just kidding.
First
So
appearance of
I,
Adventure Comics 306 with all the other subs. It was, yeah, Chlorophyll
mhm.
Kid, Fire Lad, Night Girl, Polar Boy. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a greater appreciation for Stone Boy now, having read that or at least perused that Adventure Comics through 15 issue.
Created by Edmund Hamilton, John Fort. The cover date for that first appearance of March 1963, which puts the sale date at like January 63, means that the subs are older than the X-Men. They're older than the Avengers. They're older than the Teen Titans. They're older than Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos.
Wow.
We got to put some respect on the sub's
Yeah.
name.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't really learn too much. I do love in his bio, Stoneboy has found no fixed occupation after the subs disbanded. I just love that it's been at least 2 years since that special had come out because that was 1984, I think. Was it? Maybe it was 85. I can't remember.
I think it was
Um,
84. Yeah.
yeah, and the sub, they're still. First of all, that they're still referencing the sub, that special is amazing. And that they're gone, they're lost, they're totally lost. These characters, Polar Boy really put a hurt on them by disbanding them.
Yeah. Now I'm really curious. Do we, I can't recall if we see them beyond just, maybe just a quick appearance or something. Do they have any involvement in the storylines um, up through because they become a sort of major plot point in the 5 years later run.
Right. Well, we're gonna have to keep watch. I appreciated that the Richard Byrne and Carl Kisa artwork that they incorporated him into the logo, his own logo. He's standing on his own title logo, which I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's. I don't know if anybody, any other entry has done something where they've interacted with their logo, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
cool. I actually
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I looked up Richard Burning because I was like, who's Richard Burning? Um, he opened a design firm, and then in the early 80s, he was on staff at Capitol Comics. He was
Mm.
editor in chief and art director for Nexus, Badger, Whisper until they stopped publishing in 1984.
Okay.
Then he did some freelancing. He came to DC. He became DC Comics design director. And for the next 5 years, he supervised or contributed to the design of titles. And I don't know if they mean title logos or the title in general, including Watchmen, The Dark Knight, um, editing DC produced sequels to The Prisoner,
Mm.
um, and then he designed the branding and logo design for DC's Vertigo Mature Readers imprint.
Wow.
So, and then he also oversaw the development and packaging of graphic novels and DC's first collected edition. So it sounds like, he's more of like a behind the scenes kind of person. So
Mm-hmm.
it's always so interesting where that they're like, who do you want to draw? He's like, give me Stone Boy of all things, right?
Yeah.
Because that artwork is very sort of, it's almost cartooning in a way.
Yes. Yes. Very and yeah, very comic strip style
Yeah.
art. Yeah. But I like it.
The only other person I can sort of think in the original Who's Who, I'm sure there's more. Wolfman, Marv Wolfman draws Plasmus, that sort of pink blobby, and then Paras, I think, inks. So they flip. I mean, if you're going to give a writer a chance to draw, you give him a blob to draw. Great. But yeah, if you look at that, it's really funny. And then, like, sort of later in one of the secret files, Jeff Johns draws Impulse when he's Kid Flash, when he becomes Kid Flash. Jeff Johns, actually,
Hmm.
because he was apparently an artist at some point. But that's not where he obviously stuck with. So,
Hmm.
yeah. So, fun little, especially as the sort of the opening here.
Did you notice one of the background images has him falling headfirst down, and Byrne did that on the cover as well. So I thought that was a nice continuity
it
aspect.
it is interesting in his original appearances though. They almost turned into like bizarro creatures,
Yeah, I noticed that too.
right?
And he talked while in stone form
Oh,
in those early appearances, at least in the Adventure 315. Maybe some
okay,
others that I was looking at, but obviously they did not keep that up in later appearances.
right. Okay, Sun Boy, as drawn by my boy Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. My God, so good.
So, speaking of, how do you get these assignments? How did Garcia Lopez? Did they want him to do some boy specifically? Did they draw straws? They pass out cards. Here's your next character. It just seems like an odd choice for him to do this character, but
Right?
I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I don't know. It is so CGS. We had a bound copy of Who's Who that we would take to conventions and put in front of artists'
Oh,
faces, and
right.
then they would sign it.
Yes.
And it was always fascinating when they would look through and like they'd be like, "Oh my God, I haven't looked through this in a long time." This was some of them would say it was a very fun assignment. Um, and they're pretty good about, like, for instance, later we're going to talk about Supergirl. I was wondering why they chose Jim Mooney for Supergirl, not knowing that he had a lengthy career drawing Supergirl. I was wondering why didn't they just get the original, the original co-creator, but it made sense. Jim
Hmm.
Mooney, I mean, his name was almost made on Supergirl. So, yeah, why do they pick certain artists over others? I mean, it's very clear when you see like Perez or um, in this issue, Kurt Swan and John Byrne doing Superman. Okay, so it sort of makes sense. Garcia Lopez, I don't know, but hey, I'm gonna take it. It looks good. They have the first appearance wrong. He first appeared in, of course, I didn't write it down. Supergirl's Three Girlfriends, whatever issue that is. It's like an adventure comics, I think, or maybe it's an action
I
comic.
think it's action.
Okay,
Yeah, because I looked this up because it says he was initially rejected for membership
in that issue.
and that issue, and so I'm like, okay, I look it up, and it's it's he was rejected by implication. There's no direct. I'm sorry, you're out, because he appears. He's identified specifically as Sunboy in this one panel
Mm-hmm.
when the Legionnaires are talking to Supergirl. And this is the issue in which Supergirl and Brainiac 5 become members of the Legion. So, we get that I'm sure you've read that story, where they like I said, they become Legionnaires, and like I said, it's by implication. So they get in, and there's only two spots because they specifically said something about, oh, this year we're going to allow one girl and one guy to join, and so they fill the spots. Sunboy's out.
Yeah. So what they're listing here is when he joins the team. Right.
Hmm.
Action Comics 276 is his first appearance. Right. You're just like you said. It's the adventure listing. That's when he joins the Legion. So I guess that's why they had it in
Oh,
Who's Who.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also was who else would we get? Phantom Girl, Triplicate Girl, Shrinking Violent, Bouncing Boy, and Brainiac 5, all first appearing in Action Comics 276. That's a
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, because
hefty group of
Supergirl
names.
is concerned at first that she's meeting a descendant of the infamous Brainiac, and
So
and
that
by I think by the end of that issue, Brainiac 5 is asking her to go steady.
that means all of those characters are 5 months older than the entire modern Marvel age. 5 months earlier than Fantastic Four #1. Take that.
Hmm.
I didn't really learn too much.
No.
In his powers, he has momentary bursts of near stellar intensity, which I thought, okay, better intensity than mass, because then Starboy is going to suck some of that mass from you. If he was like a true stellar being, you know, could be interesting in many ways, because then you could have the two of them working together. But it's more about the intensity and the radiance, right? In his first appearance, super radiance, whatever
Yeah,
that meant.
yeah, exactly. And I noticed too in some later issues as I was flipping through my omnibus that they would draw Sunboy as if he was a light bulb, like he was constantly lit, and they quickly stopped doing that.
Yeah. But the Luis Garcia Lopez, like even the eyebrows look like they're on fire.
Mm,
He just
his
he
hair.
yeah, he looks like a hunk. I mean, he's just it's so good.
Well, speaking of that, one of the things that I point or that I gleaned from this, they note in here his social status.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, while also being the most visible Legionnaire on the social scene on Earth.
Hmm.
Dude gets around.
See, that's why. Remember, we talked back whatever issue that was with the new Legion, and he was front and center. We want you for the Legion, and there was Sunboy, right? Put
Yep,
the pretty
that's right.
boy right
Yeah,
in the center. So
and
good.
and what happens later in the 5 year later run, that totally makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. As I was looking up why Jose Luis Garcia Lopez possibly would have been the artist, I came across a story that I've heard before. Um, Seems to suggest that it's true, but uh, Mobius, the artist Mobius, was touring DC Comics in the 80s and just happened to see some pages by Jose Garcia Lopez and said, "This Garcia Lopez uses models, right?" And whoever was with him said, "No." And Mobius says, "Son of a bitch." Like that's, and they always say that's the how much more high compliment could you give
Yeah,
when someone like Mobius is pissed that Garcia Lopez can draw the way he draws. And that article goes on to say things like DC really kept Garcia Lopez in house. Like they did not want Marvel to steal him away.
mm-hmm.
That's why they probably put him on the style guide and on Superman and covers. They wanted to
Right.
keep him happy. I hope they paid him. Um, because he became, for many of us older readers, he became when we think of some of these characters, we think of a lot of those licensed material, and it was all Garcia Lopez artwork
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's why he didn't draw many books at the time. He drew covers, but not interiors. And then to see him in Who's Who pop up is always great too. But he was their secret weapon, and they were determined to keep him. I saw some original artwork of current stuff. He has an Instagram page, and he still uses perspective lines and all those like artist tricks of putting in all the different perspective lines for bodies and buildings. And I mean, he is the original comic book draftsman. I mean, he's
Well, you could see
amazing.
that in this image in
Mm.
Who's Who too. Is like with the radiation emanating out of the reactor
Right.
in the background. It's like, yeah, this is, and then the
Yeah.
melting, the where Sunboy is standing, you see the bulkhead, the metal door, or whatever that is, just melting behind him. That's just so cool.
So good. All right. I could talk for hours about that guy. Sun Eater.
Boy, speaking of an assignment, hey, draw a cloud in space.
First appearance. Well, first appearance Adventure Comics 352, Jim Shooter and Kurt Swan, but there was that odd, which I just discovered doing this research, the odd uh, Sun Eater precursor in Adventure Comics 305, where he's a green primate looking thing sucking on the sun.
Oh, right.
they're looking at him like on a screen, and he's like, "Oh, look, I don't know if it's Cosmic Boy, whoever's like, look, there's a Sun Eater," and it's like, well, that's not what the Sun Eater looks like, and that's not what he becomes, But um, we've seen many other different versions of a Sun Eater, and like All Star Superman and Final Night, and they don't
Hmm.
always look like pink clouds. Um, so that's what I learned going back and researching whether Who's Who was correct about the first appearance. I was like, oh, I didn't know there's a story there, some big green looking thing.
What I don't remember in that original story, the 352 with the Fatal Five and everything, um, is this. So they in the entry it says the controllers use the Sun Eater as a weapon to control evil in the universe. What I don't recall in that original story is why is the Sun Eater then going towards Earth?
Right.
Was it did the controllers consider Earth evil, and so they're going to snuff it out? So I'll have to go back and look at that. I'm sure it doesn't get into those details because we
No.
didn't find out about the controller connection until later, as I recall.
Yeah, when we did the issues number, what was it, 7 and 8, I guess it was, or 8 and 9, and then the when those 5 Legionnaires were lost and went up against the controller, and I went back and did like a big controller read. That was all stuff that was kind of, you could even say, retconned, right? Like
Mm.
they retconned that the Sun Eater was even part of it. And then didn't they say that that was a rogue controller?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So even if they did create the Sun Eaters for that aspect, he was using it for the
Mm-hmm.
bad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah. So much retconning goes on into the Legion universe.
Well, like you said, it's been around since before Methuselah. So
Yeah. Anything else for Sun Eater?
no.
No.
Oh,
Uh,
Kurt Swan and Larry Malstead did the art on this.
mm,
Three
yeah.
different images. The small, it's a half, not just slightly less than half page entry too.
Yeah.
Super Chief gets slightly more page space than the Sun Eater, which is
All
funny
right.
because Super Chief just appeared in my weekly 52
Yes.
read that I'm doing.
Yes.
So it's funny how again one of those weird coincidences.
Right.
Here he is again.
All right. Supergirl, as I mentioned, as drawn by Jim Mooney, who drew the backup feature Supergirl in Action Comics from 1959 to 1968.
Wow, that's a long run.
Yeah. So if you're going to give someone a character to draw, you give Jim Mooney Supergirl. Um, I love that her base of operations was constantly moving around. I don't know. The only real Supergirl stuff I read was the 80s stuff when she was in Chicago. And I know that she was Midvale and this place and the West Coast and the Mid Coast and, like all over the place, right? I love that they list almost all of them.
Yeah, yeah, that's different for these entries.
And that she has so many occupations. I did not know she was a TV actress on a soap opera. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was new to me.
Uh,
Also new. I didn't know she lost her powers for a while.
hmm.
Which isn't that why she became an actress? I can't remember.
Oh, maybe. There is a Supergirl maxi series going on right now, written by Tom King. So that was kind of one thing he said, and then made me think of this Who's Who. And this is an element about Supergirl that is played with in like the TV show, was that she witnessed the destruction of Krypton, and that she was old enough. She was older than Kal-El,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a young girl, and then her family got you know secluded onto Argo City, which was a domed city that survived. But here in her origin story, that's not the way they mention it here. And I don't know if this is a pre-crisis thing or they're just saying this is how we want her pre-crisis thing to be. She was born after the destruction of Krypton. So what she witnessed was Argo City being destroyed, and that's why she gets sent to Earth, but not the whole planet. So, which I guess kind of makes sense if she's from Argo City. she wouldn't also have escaped Krypton the same time Kal-El did, right? Like she would have
Mm-hmm.
to be on the float. So I thought that was interesting. I don't think I've read her original first appearance. If I have, I've forgotten it. Um, but this notion that she has survived, Tom King was talking about Clark Kent, Kal-El only can speculate about his lost homeworld, whereas she lived it,
Mm-hmm.
and she lost family and teachers and friends and a whole entire culture and planet. So, but in this pre-crisis origin story, that's not the way it is. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
I like the idea of it sounds bad to say someone having this trauma, but from a character storytelling standpoint, that makes her to me actually more of an interesting character.
Yeah,
Uh, having to deal with that, the loss that she would have to feel, and then here's her cousin who is the greatest superhero in the universe, and yeah, he got sent away as a baby, but I don't think that compares to what she's gone through.
right.
And yet
Because
and yet she's the secondary super character.
exactly, he gets labeled as the last son of Krypton.
Yeah.
He gets labeled as, oh, poor Kal-El has never, comes from a doomed planet. Excuse me, she actually lived there,
Yeah.
and I loved that was something that Jeff Loeb really played with too, like that in essence she number one could have been older than him, even though she was younger in a weird sort of way, and
Mm-hmm.
she was also more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Loeb and Turner brought her back in the early 2000s, she was more powerful than Superman.
Yeah.
um, so interesting play here. And not much connection to the Legion outside that she was a member. They don't necessarily.
I loved though her appearances in the Legion, especially in the later volume 3 run, where during like the Darkness Saga, the Great
Hmm.
Darkness Saga. She'd just show up, and she was
Volume 2.
it made me, was it volume 2? Okay.
Yeah.
She made me, or that her appearances in the Legion made me want to read more about Supergirl.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I didn't care because I is it the daring new adventures of Supergirl you were talking about
Yep.
in the 80s. So when that was out, I don't remember who the artist was, but I remember I wasn't all that interested in that art.
Carmine Infantino.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Um, Another reason why I stayed away from the Flash at that time too was.
Oh.
uh, anyway, so I've just always enjoyed her as a character, and then obviously what happens with her in Crisis again, I think makes her the most important, or one of the most important characters in that story, and not Superman, or either Superman for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about that in the Crisis tape a lot about Marvel. He didn't want it to become a Superman or a Batman or a Wonder Woman, and characters that have a journey throughout the maxi series come across as she comes across as more level-headed, more confident, um, more capable, I should say.
Yeah.
She's got a great arc
Yeah.
in Crisis. Yeah.
Yeah. It's too bad that that's the vehicle in which they killed her off.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about Crisis and we're talking about the super characters, we're about ready to, I think, talk about Superman.
Yeah.
Did you read the note from the editor at the beginning of this issue of Who's Who?
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
So interesting, because when you sent me the list of characters to talk about in this issue of Who's Who, you're like, basically maybe Superman, right? Because here the Superman is the post-crisis Superman, John Byrne, Man of Steel Superman, in which there is no Legion connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this note from the editor here at the beginning. So Bob Greenberger. Some of you are going to wonder, are going to be wondering where a number of entries scheduled for this issue are. They mentioned the Fortress, Superman. They mentioned specifically the Fortress of Solitude. What happened was that we changed Superman, and they talk about that change that I just mentioned. And so they were wondering, for historical purposes, should we include entries on portions of the Superman mythos that are no longer valid? Many thought this would confuse readers and make the sharp changes less certain. Since this volume is called the definitive directory of the DC universe, it was decided that we should be definitive in our entries. Therefore, since the Golden Age Superman and Supergirl only recently left our continuity, it was felt that they should remain and get their due. Blah 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 blah. Okay, then why the hell is Superboy not in here?
Because he's wrapped up into the Superman thing, I guess. Yeah. So there's a really great, I don't know if you've come across it in some of your research. There's a gentleman who is no longer with us, actually. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, Zoom, Xum, who went and created Who's Who entries on Pre-Crisis Superman, Pre-Crisis Earth 1 Wonder Woman, Earth 2 Aquaman, and put out, and then some other DC obscure characters that never got into Who's Who in any of the Who's Who. And he was putting them up for sale. It was called Zoom's Who. You could probably look up Zoom's Who instead of Who's Who. And because I kept seeing this entry on Superman from Earth 1, and I'm like, that's never been around. And then realized, oh, it was created. So you could buy, I have one, I really should have purchased more than one copy, but I bought one copy. Unfortunately, he passed away like months after that, unexpectedly, or just, I don't know why. It was really kind of tragic. But it's a whole volume of things, of random DC characters, plus some of his own characters. And it's all designed like Who's Who, but I'm pretty sure he used Jose Luis Garcia Lopez artwork for, and he just basically mocked up. So if you don't find it, I'll send you some images. But if you look up Zoom's Who, for anybody who's listening, you'll see. It's really great, and it touches my heart because it's like, yes, those pre-crisis characters that I grew up with, Wonder Woman, Superman, and some other ones, they get their own entry that you could, slide into your version of Who's Who. It's really great. So,
yeah, I did not know about that. So yeah. I definitely need to look this up.
Was there anything for the super? I mean, there's nothing really to talk about because he's not, quote unquote. I have more to talk about him in Legends than I do in Who's Who. He is not the Legion's Superman. So
no,
it's like there really is nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Other than to make like you just did, notate that there is no Legion Superman in this Who's Who. Shall we go to Legends?
Mm-hmm.
So we're taking a look at Legends and the Legion involvement in Legends, just like we did Crisis. This story continues off of issue 1, where Darkseid has Operation Humiliation. So Kirby that they did that. Where he's going to try to discredit our superheroes by using G. Gordon Godfrey, who is Glorious Godfrey from the New Gods, acting like a pundit trying to discredit the superheroes. Why do we need superheroes, right? I just thought it was very interesting, some of the language that he used. He says here, the rise of the superhero in our society is certain to bring about society's downfall. Frankly, I feel the very concept of the hero has become trite and outmoded. Today's world is simply too dangerous for such an outdated notion as the heroic ideal. It's time we put all such childish notions behind us. So this is whipping up the public and very much like fake news and rigged elections and et cetera, to the point where they are attacking the heroes. They're beating up on Jason Todd Robin. They're shooting at Blue Beetle. They're trying to swarm Guy Gardner. They're throwing perfume at Batman. I mean, it's just crazy.
Which okay. sorry to undercut the your point here, but a perfume blinded Batman. That's just so funny.
So what we get in this issue is just a lot of scenes of that. A lot of what happened in the first issue is now being shown and set into motion, and and that's really it. And the unfortunate thing about this issue is a lot of this stuff gets carried over into the tie-ins
Mm-hmm.
and not in the issue itself. So as I was reading it, because I wanted to reread it, I was like, boy, we get the buildup of the Suicide Squad and um, um, all these little like the Blue Beetle thing takes place in his series. Guy Gardner, like it's just like, are you kidding me? There's no real action development, or I don't know how to describe this issue. It's just like these little scenes
Mm-hmm.
with Darkseid's plan coming into play, but it's not like anybody knows this is going on yet, and Captain Marvel is whining. I don't know. Did you read it or just flip through it this time?
I just flipped through it. I was mostly
Yeah.
focused on the Cosmic Boy stuff, but no, you're right. It's very much it's a build up issue and reactions. So we get a lot of reactions from the superhero characters.
Yeah.
And I'd say that the scene where I joked about it, but when Batman and Robin get attacked, the people are like, um, a mindless, dangerous mob, right? And that's jarring. We see the Batmobile being flipped over by the good citizens of Gotham. That's a definite change, right? So that's I appreciated the the way in which the story was told, even though we're not getting a whole lot really plot wise or character development wise.
And even like with the Cosmic Boy stuff, I assume it's going to play out in his miniseries. They don't even use footnotes, right? They're not
Mm-hmm.
even saying, "Oh, go look at this, go look at
Yeah,
that, go look at
yeah,
that."
exactly.
They're just kind of showing you little vignettes, and we're supposed to go, "Oh, that Darkseid, he's such a creep."
Well,
Um,
although this is on page 20, so this is the scene later in the book where Cosmic Boy wakes up in Titan's Tower,
yeah,
which of course, back then that was like, oh my god, it's so cool. The Legion and Titans
I
crossover here.
forgot about that. And I was like, "Oh wow," like they always hinted that they wanted to do a crossover. This was really the only one we got until later.
Yeah, exactly. Although I will say, Byrne does not draw Titan's Tower correctly, but on the opposite page is Legends crossovers in-house ad where we
Oh,
have issue 1 of Cosmic Boy, and we got the Green Lantern Corps issue, and so I said, don't miss these exciting stories. So
Oh, see, I read it on the app, so they don't have that. So
ah
that's interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. Promote the crossovers in it, but then why not? You still should do some footnotes.
oh yeah, I totally agree. And who knows if this in-house ad being placed here was purposeful, given
Mm,
the scene with Cosmic Boy, but if it wasn't, that's a hell of a coincidence.
yeah. When I read that Godfrey quote, it almost made me feel like this was Ostrander and Len Wein talking about superhero comics. Like we always talk about,
Mm,
oh, everybody always wants to say Watchmen and Dark Knight made comics grow up in a bad way, but really it was writers' reactions to those. If they continued the grim and gritty, it's because they chose to continue it.
right.
Whether you want to label them as being grim or gritty is not or not. But then you look at something like this, and you're like, it's almost like they're trying to grow up the DC universe. They're trying to move the DC universe into not just superheroes and capes and cowls, but like actually existing in the DC universe as vigilantes. Um,
What the public reaction would be to these things. Yeah.
yeah, almost like trying to. Maybe this is why every time Byrne did something at DC, people were like, "Oh, they're just trying to Marvelize the DC universe in a way,"
Yeah.
you know. Um,
We could say
Dark's,
that about Wolfman too in Titans, in the new Teen Titans.
yeah.
I'm sure there's a bunch of other examples we could pull out too.
So like Darkseid talks to Phantom Stranger and says, well, Phantom Stranger says to Darkseid, your plan is going to fail because the need for heroes for legends to aspire to is far too ingrained in humanity ever to be fully stamped out. Um, I actually like that because I was like, huh, that's actually something that's very Legion-esque, like
Mm.
that's the whole reason why the Legion
Yeah.
formed.
Yeah.
So I like that. Even if it's not directly related to the Legion, he's right because he can prove 1,000 years later that's exactly what happens.
And 1,000 years later, we get Darkseid going up against
That's
that
true.
superheroic ideal. So
That's very true. Yeah, I agree. He shortens the tower, the sides of the tower, maybe because he's, "Well, that's not the way you can't really architecturally
yeah,
blah blah blah
right.
blah." It's like, come on, Berg, get it right. Just and like there's a lot of things even in that sequence. So we're told things, we're not shown things. He says there was a battle with earlier with Brimstone and the JLA. The building crashes on them. If we counter that against what happened to Magnetic Kid, it's like, shouldn't Cosmic Boy been able to do the same
Mm.
thing or protect himself? That he got swamped by a metal that just doesn't make sense.
Well, but wasn't he when he went up against Brimstone himself? He was, he was having a hard time with that and was about ready to be
True,
killed when the
true.
Justice League showed up. So
Yeah,
maybe he was just too weak.
yeah. And then, first of all, I don't know how he knows who Flash is unless they showed up in that Justice League Legion team up way back. I don't remember. Or he
Well,
just
but
recognizes them, I
you say,
guess.
remember, Kaz is now supposedly
Right.
a 20th century historian buff.
But then he says the JLA disappeared. Okay, where did they go? Is that part of why we see Professor Ivo, on that bottom page? But why he's watching the Titans and not the Justice League, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
weird. Yeah.
And then he says, I have to go off and find Night Girl. Well, you didn't worry about her in issue 1, and we haven't even seen her. And he doesn't even say Night Girl. He says my girlfriend or whatever he
Mm.
says, the love of my life or whatever. So I was not a fan of the pacing and the writing of the logistics of the writing of this issue.
That's got to be a tough thing. Like you were talking about, all this is really just to point you to these other things, these other issues elsewhere. That's got to be a difficult task to move the plot along, have all these characters, and then also arrange it so that you're enticing the reader to go buy these other issues.
Wolfman did it. Oh, oh, I said it.
but yes, but that was a less wasn't that and you would know better than me, but wasn't that less of a concerted effort than maybe when Legends started coming out, when they were, because they introduced that idea in Crisis, right? Go here and explore this and read that. But this was very much I've always thought of it as Legends was like, okay, they learned all this stuff in Crisis about how to tie in stuff, sell more comic books. Now they're really going to test it out in Legends,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
maybe to the detriment of the overall story.
Right. And we mentioned last episode that, a lot of editors didn't want Legends to
Mm.
invade their property, and certainly not for a whole year. Um, and when you read The Crisis, Wolfman did a smart thing where the first issue of The Crisis takes place uh, 6 months in the future from where the regular titles were.
Oh, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So as a way to buffer. And you could feel it as you're reading it. It's not until issues like 5 and 6 when they start to have these little footnotes of go here, go there, and all that other stuff. So Wolfman is really trying to fundamentally create a story. And in Legends, this is all in hindsight now, but even though Legends, you read the story and there's some kind of narrative, the tie-ins almost become, instead of it going from the main book out, it's almost like it goes from the main book out and back in again,
Mm-hmm.
but not in the good way. And
Mm-hmm.
um I was just surprised at all these little vignettes as opposed to a story
Yeah.
and a conflict, you know. And I get it; they're just building it, and I did like, you know, I wrote in my notes the thing about Jason Todd. You know, everybody always says, "Well, of course he's going to become Red Hood because the Joker beat on him." Yeah, and about a year before that, so did the public. You know, like I forgot that he gets destroyed
Yep.
in this issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is post-crisis Jason Todd. Well, no, it's not. Because we have not gotten year one yet. And we did not get that story where Bruce Wayne or Batman catches Jason Todd. Yeah, so it's not post-crisis Jason Todd just yet. See, that's why this is so
Yeah.
confusing. So, and this is where the Superman talk comes in, because at the time of this month that we're reading in September of 1986, we are only still at the end of Man of Steel. Issues 5 and 6 came out at the same time. We have not gotten Superman #1 yet, and the new Action Comics and the new Adventures of Superman. So here is Byrne's Superman showing up in Legends. He's clearly Byrne's Superman, but he is acting, because he's dealing with the president, the way Frank Miller was using Superman in Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
And the other fun thing is, I think Batman is the same thing. It's the modern Batman, not quite the year one Batman, and not the New Adventures Batman, which comes out after year one. He is a young Frank Miller Batman, because he said, "Come on, punk. If I leave you with enough teeth, punk." Right? Like, he's violent. He's like not even like the Jim Aparo, Mike W. Barr Batman. He is like, I'm gonna beat these guys, and I don't, you know, when he gets hit with a perfume, Gordon's like, "Come on, my men will take care." And he's like, "No, I don't trust your men." Like, this is clearly Dark Knight Batman, and it's so weird, these characters trying to mishmash, but they're not yet formalized. They haven't cemented yet.
It was a weird time reading DC Comics back then.
Oh yeah.
Given all those changes, and you know, it's whenever I think back on it, it's like I never felt really confused on it about anything, but it was just like, well, but that doesn't make sense given what I just read over here,
Right.
and of course, hindsight is 2020. But you know, now looking back on it, you can see how things developed and coalesced eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, sort of, to a point, anyway.
But not yet.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
on the stands is the Batman that Byrne liked, because he also used him that way in Man of Steel, which again was just an echo of Dark Knight. Very similar to the way Batman's used in Legends. But at the time, we are post issue 400 of Batman, where we had a few Max Allan Collins stories before year one, which was what, 403 or 404. So this is a whole different Batman. And if Batman and the outside, you know, like, I guess they're outsiders by now, if he's showing up in that Jim Aparo Batman, that's Bronze Age. That's post Neil Adams, pre-crisis, that, you know, just that. It's so trippy. There's probably 5 different versions of Batman on the stands when Legend hits. I mean, it's just so crazy. It's crazy. So that's what I took away from this. The Cosmic Boy stuff is going to play out in the miniseries, which we will eventually get to. So, you know, that was just a few nods to the Legion. I do like the whole hero connection thing that Phantom Stranger is talking about, but otherwise... Oh, and we should mention that Godfrey does have powers, suggestive powers, sort of like Psycho Pirate. So that's probably what's going on here, although it hasn't been stated yet.
Yep.
Yeah. Anything else for Legends?
I don't think so.
What'd you think of Byrne's depiction of Cosmic Boy? Visually.
It's fine.
Okay.
There's not much here though.
Right.
You know, it's. I was trying to think back on the first issue that we talked about last time. there was a couple scenes with him. Well, the fight with Brimstone, but it was more about. I mean, Brimstone being the big character that he is, that large character. I mean, he took up a lot of uh, page space, and
Right.
Cosmic Boy was just this little character up against him. So, I mean, it's not bad.
The costume sort of speaks for the character more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I do like the way he draws the costume. That's
Yeah. And they have to sell the miniseries, so they got to put him in it. All right. And then finally, Superpowers 3, issue number 4. This miniseries finally comes to an end. As I was reading 4, I really don't even remember how. I was like, how is this connecting to 3? We're only reading it because of Tyr, but again, he winds up just being comic relief in this issue.
But he does get a bit of page space in this issue.
He's more competent than the people he's with, like certainly than Mr. Freeze and Desaad. But then when things start to go bad, he's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And he just leaves the book, right? He's just gone. I've sold my toys.
Yeah, that's right. I'm done. My robotic arm talked, and now I can leave.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember. Did that happen in the previous issues?
Yeah.
It did. Okay.
Yeah.
It just seemed like maybe it was just a lot in in this particular issue. It made me think it was the first time.
Yeah, it was so weird. Like all of a sudden, there's a whole civil war going on, Apocalypse. But meanwhile, as drawn by Infantino, right? Yeah, Apocalypse looks like it could be on Earth with like building. There's a government building, and just I was like, "What? It's Apocalypse. It's not supposed to be that."
This whole thing is because I read issue 3 too, and that's the one right where Darkseid gets mugged.
Yes, it is,
and he's lamenting.
Yep.
Like, oh, this whole thing's just absurd.
And then at the end, he gets stuck in that Janus identity, and he walks off with Orion, and he's going to rebuild Apocalypse. And it's like, did they think they were going to get a Superpowers 4? Because why would you just end it like that? They literally ran out of pages. They needed a 5th issue or something.
I was going to say, was it supposed to be a 5-issue miniseries? They just cut it off?
It's terrible. So bad. And this is where trying to read everything Legion of Superheroes goes wrong, because then you have to look at, Superpowers Volume 3. Oof. Yeah, that's all I have for that. I think that's all it really demands. Yep. So funny, because Superpowers 1 and 2, volumes 1 and 2, definitely 2 is on the app. I can't remember if 1 is or vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they don't have 3. It's like they don't want to make it exist.
Probably just as well.
Yeah. And I think that brings us to the end. Yes?
I think so.
That was fun. Next episode, Legion of Superheroes issue 30. We're just going to keep going with the volume. And then we'll take a look at Who's Who. We'll take a look at anywhere else that the Legion might pop up. Very excited for the Universo project.
Yep.
I will have an announcement at the top of next episode. I don't even think Eric knows this, so
I was thinking, what is he talking about? What did I forget?
I'll tell you about it after we're done recording. So definitely, whenever that episode comes out, listen to that. Not anything we haven't done before, so just I don't want somebody to think, no, I'm not pregnant or anything like that.
No, we're not any of the show.
No, no, God, no. We can't now.
Are we?
No, we're no way we could end it. We're getting close to the halfway mark.
That's right.
Very close, very close. All right. Where can they reach you, Eric?
They can reach me at longboxreview@gmail.com. And you, Peter?
Peter at thedailyrios.com. Go check out our respective shows. Do you have anything coming up or anything you want them to know about that you just did? Your Wrath of Khan commentary?
Oh yeah, I was trying to remember what was the last thing. It's been an interesting few weeks for me, Peter. That's why I'm I'm hesitating here. Yeah, I just actually it's a re-release, but I put it into the feed under the Center Seat banner. My my talking through Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan for its 39th anniversary, I think, something like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, whatever it was released on June 4th, 1982, and so I had to put that out there this on the same day.
Very cool.
And I've got some other comic book related things I've already recorded. I just have not had time to edit.
Sure. Such as the podcaster life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you've been busy.
Yeah, I have some Zoom episodes. I've been, really getting into the Zoom stuff. I have a new timeline Tuesday, taking a look at the 25th anniversary of Kingdom Come.
That was great.
And some other stuff. Yeah, I have a conversation with David Dwanch coming up that was probably already released before this episode. And then some other things I have coming up. Yeah, it's like I said earlier on in the episode, it's summer. What else I got to do other than record while I'm in suburbia, and then they start lawn mowing, of course. All right, Eric. As always, long live
the Legion Project Podcast.
Ciao.
Bye.